I was able to get out here this morning. The ground is pretty dry over towards this side. These cattle are licking up their feet. They are eating a lot. They've obviously been waiting for some food, and I do have a part of the fence that the a tree fell on a part of the fence, and I do have to fix it up. But I figured what I would do is I would take a couple of these panels and I would block off the area until I can go over there and get the tree cut up with a chainsaw and put a new T post in. It completely landed on a T post and it bent the T post out of shape. It completely bent the T post into like an L shape, and so that's how much the tree weighs. It's a very heavy tree. I won't be able to move it. It completely bent the T post over, and I'll have to cut it up with a chainsaw, and I'll have to bring a couple of T posts out here, bring two or three T posts out here, and fix that part of the fence up. But I'll tie up these panels. In the meantime, I will tie up some panels to the fence to just make sure that the cattle don't go sniffing around in the area. And I don't have any cattle missing. I don't have any extra cattle, so the neighbor's cattle didn't end up on my field. My cattle didn't end up on the neighbor's field, and I'll get that squared away tomorrow. And I will just kind of just block it off until then. The animals are looking good. Uh, they're obviously eating a lot. They got real big guts, and but the thing about the grain is that one of the big things about the grain is that a lot of times, even when these animals, even if you have your animals out on grass and they eat until they stop eating, if they eat until they stop eating and you give them some grain, they'll probably just end up eating some more grain. That's one of the big benefits of feeding them a little bit of grain on a daily basis, is that even though that they ate as much as they were looking to eat, they will eat a little bit more. If you leave them on grass, they'll only eat so much. They'll only eat so much, and then they'll stop eating, and then they'll just kind of waddle around, or they'll lay down and they'll start chewing cud. But if you wait until your animals are done eating grass and you feed them a little bit of grain, they'll usually just keep right on eating. And so that's also a good way to put a little bit of extra poundage on them. And the animals look really good right now because they got that rain on them. They got a lot of rain on them. Their fur's growing in. They got their winter coats coming in, and they got that rain on them. And so it's like it cleaned them all off. They're all like shiny, and they all got these big fur coats on them, and they all got big old bellies, and the animals look really good right now. When it's a little bit cool outside, the animals just look really really good because their fur starts to grow in, they eat more, etc., etc. All right, granted that you're taking care of the animal, all right. And so the animals look really good right now. If I took my animals to the sale barn, they would look really good. They would look very just good looking animals. And so yeah, these animals are definitely eating a lot. Their manure has loosened up, and the manure loosening up could just be from the grass has a lot of moisture in it. I did fertilize the grass, and but it could be that their manure is just loosening up because they got a lot of moisture in their food. I'm keeping a good eye on them, making sure they're not bloating, and they also they got really big they got really big guts on them, and so I'm definitely certain that they are eating a lot. I would reasonably I'm looking at the schedule, and I'm thinking that I will be liquidating on about the 6th of December, 7th, 6th, 7th, something like that of December, okay? I'm taking a look at the schedule, and that's when I reasonably anticipate that I can, and I will be buying new calves on the 8th. And I have about 8 calves. I have about 7 or 8 calves. If I sell four and I buy six, I sell four and I buy six, or I may sell four and buy seven. Okay, it depends on how much room I have in the preconditioning facility. If I have a lot of room in the preconditioning facility, I'll be able to bring all of the animals out onto some kind of a lease pasture. It doesn't have to be this one, right? I mean, I could take my animals out to to my other, one of my other pastures or wherever I want to take them. I could even bring them all out here, and I can sell the eight, right? I could sell the the eight biggest animals, and bring the other calves out here. And depending on how much room I have at the preconditioning facility, I will determine when I should buy calves, right? And if I bring home a set of calves and I have them sitting if I have them sitting at my ranch, if I have them sitting at the preconditioning facility for a month, if I have them sitting at the preconditioning facility for 2 weeks and I haven't brought in any more calves, I'm not going to bring in any more calves because that 2 to 4 week mark is usually when the animals get sick from the weaning process. Like if you bring home an animal from the sale barn, right? I talk about this all the time. When you bring home an animal from the sale barn, with these balling calves, almost all these calves are balling or just hardly been weaned at all. Maybe they've been weaned for 3 days or something. But usually these animals are either very freshly weaned or they are balling when I bring them home. Okay, and if you sell a balling calf, if you sell a calf that is, not up to commercial standards, right? They're not up to commercial standards, and you're gonna get discounted, right? I talk about this, all the time. The people at the sale barn, the people at the sale barn, you got to understand that the people at the sale barn really know what they're doing. The auctioneer really knows what they're doing. Like when you watch, like me, when I discuss these animals and I tell you what these animals look like and et cetera, I'm pretty good at it, right? I mean, I can more or less tell you what the animal's going to sell for and what the animal's going to weigh, right? And are they up to conditioning standards? But you got to understand that the sale barn people, the auctioneer at the sale barn sees every single animal that goes through the ring every single week that they are open. Every single last one of them. The auctioneer sees every single last one of them. So if there is something slightly wrong with the animal, if the animal is not quite up to commercial standard, then they'll get discounted. Your animals will get discounted. If your animals are slightly not up to standard, your animals will get discounted. If your animals are up to standard, then they will get sold at commodity price. If you have 1+ type commodity animals, and they may even go over commodity average, okay? And so, these when I bring home animals, if I bring home a set of animals and I leave them on my preconditioning facility for 2 weeks and I take a look at them, I'm not even going to bother bringing home more animals simply because I don't want to mix in a bunch of animals that have been that I don't know what's going on with them. I could end up bringing home a sick one on accident, right? And then now I got animals that have been weaned for 2 weeks that are stressed out, suppressed immune system, and then I drop in a bunch of calves with them. It's just hard on them, and so I really am looking to bring home about I really look to bring home the animals at about the same time, and I look up to fill up the preconditioning facility at the same time. And so, maybe I sell eight, maybe I sell a five, and I buy 10, or I'll figure out what exactly am I going to do. I'm going to gauge it as I go. That's the whole thing about me. There are a lot of nuances in the business. Okay, there are a lot of small things in the business. The small details are very important. All right, a lot of this stuff, the small details are where people mess up. Okay, you use the wrong medication, you put your animals on the wrong type of feed, right? Et cetera, et cetera. Something, you use the wrong fertilizer for your grass, right? So, the small details are where people mess up. And this stuff, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. I discuss this all the time. If this was easy, everybody would be doing it. When you take a look at what I'm doing, it just is what it is. I actually put in the work and I actually made it. What I mean, like my whole thing is like if you're legitimately an idiot, if you have a bunch of opinions and you have nothing to show for it, if you're going 180 degrees in the wrong direction, I'm not even going to attempt to save you, right? That's the whole thing. All right, I'm not even going to attempt to save you. Why would I? Save yourself. All right, if you legitimately are going 180 degrees in the wrong direction, all right, if you have a bunch of opinions and you have nothing to show for it, then I'm not even going to attempt to save you. You save yourself. All right. When you take a look at what I do in the cattle business, it just is what it is. I do very well for myself. I effectively make more money as a cattleman than anybody on the planet makes doing anything. You could be a doctor, and I probably make more money than you. I make more money than a majority of doctors. I make more money than effectively anybody on the entire planet. Effectively, almost anybody. I make enough money to not worry about money. Okay, the amount of money that I make is even going upwards. Like if I ran my business sideways from today for the next 365 days, I'd probably make something like 360 or 350, $500,000, something in that range. my income is actually going upwards. All right. And if I continue to run my business the way that I'm running my business, and I didn't use any leverage, which I use leverage, if I did not use any leverage and I only took the earnings that my business made and I put the earnings back into my business, right? I simply only utilized cash flow. I did not use any debt, and I only reinvested my earnings, and I grew my business like that. From this point for 365 days, I would end up with almost like 150 cattle. All right, I would end up with 150 cattle, and I would be selling like a what's 150 divided by you know 7 or 8. I mean 7.5. I mean it'd be like I'd be selling 20 cattle a month. All right, I'd be selling 20 cattle a month, so the check in my hand would be about 40, 50 grand, and I would have 150 cattle, and that would be with me just reinvesting my earnings. I would be liquidating about 10 or 15% of my investment, about 10% of the investment, 15% of the investment, and I would be making like 50 grand. All right, I don't, I would still end up making like over $1 million a year if that was all I did. Even right now, even right now, I make like 350, 500, and I'm not having any difficulty with this money. The way that I described money is that it's not everything, but it is something. The dollar that I make is the same dollar that anybody else makes. It's the same. It's all the same money, right? It's not everything, but it is something. And when it comes down to it, I actually made it. I actually put in the effort and I made it. It's not my opinion, right? If you have a bunch of opinions and you have nothing to show for it, then that's very not good. All right, that's like one of the that's very not good. That's like one of the worst things that could ever happen to you. All right, legitimately, if you have a bunch of opinions and you have nothing to show for it, if you're going 180 degrees in the wrong direction, etc., etc. All right, stuff like that, that's like the worst. Legitimately being poor, right? Like not financially, but like poor character. Poor, just legitimately being poor, right? Because if you're broke, it doesn't matter. If you're poor, it's very not good because the longer you go the wrong direction, the worse off you will become. It's like walking down a path. If you go the wrong way for a very long period of time, it will legitimately the longer you go the wrong way for, the worse off you will become. All right, you really do not want to be going the wrong direction. All right? And when I discuss all this stuff, right? I mean, like, but it's legitimately like becoming poor. Like you're going the wrong way. You have a bunch of opinions. You have nothing to show for it, right? You're, whatever, right? Your life is a magical journey, and anytime anything happens to your magical journey, you just throw a pissy fit, right? All of this stuff is like it's like the worst stuff that can ever happen to you. And I've discussed this idea about being surrounded by idiots. And why do one of my whole big things about this is like one of the big reasons why I do this is because chances are for the average person, for almost everybody, this is the only time you will ever get to see anything like this. Somebody just doing extremely well. This may be your only time. And I'm not saying I want to hang out with you. I don't want to hang out with any of you. I guarantee it. All right, I don't want to hang out with anybody. I guarantee it. All right, me. I wake up, I go to work, I do whatever the heck I feel like, and then I go to sleep. I don't sell my soul to the devil. All right, that's effectively how I live my life. It's I run beef cattle. Okay, I run beef cattle, and I managed to make a large sum of money doing this. I didn't sell my soul to the devil to get here. I split my chops open for years to get here. I didn't make any money for the first 12 years, and I'm on effectively my 16th year, and I didn't make any money for the first 12 years. Any at all. I split my chops open to get here. All right, and I guarantee the whole thing about it is like if you even manage to do 10%, first of all, I'd be very happy for you, right? Like if you get your panties in a wad and oh my god, right? Nobody cares what you think. Opinions don't do anything for anybody. Let's see it. If you say you can run cattle, let's see it. Right? If you're losing money, then you're effectively. I mean, that's like you don't want to be in a situation where you're losing money. If you're losing money slowly over a long period of time is the worst thing that you could possibly do. And I'm not talking about losing a couple $1,000s. I'm like, if you dump money, if you like put $100,000 into something and you lose like but it really depends on how much money you make to begin with. Okay, because if you make whatever, if you have $500 billion and you lose $100 million, it's just the cost of business. All right, and like and I've spoken about this. You don't need to spend a lot of money to learn how to do something. And the world is not unfair because there are people with $500 billion. That's not what I'm going. That's not what I'm getting at. All right, even learning how to do something does not cost a lot of money. It's just something that I emphasize a lot. Right, you should not be in a situation where you're throwing hail marys into the middle of nowhere, leveraging yourself. Dropping hundreds of thousands of dollars on something and then going bankrupt. All right, if you lose a little bit of money here and there, that's just the cost of business. I mean, you can't just absolutely not lose money. All right, but business is a global competition for dollars. Business is a global competition for dollars, and when it comes down to it, I actually made it. And when I make these videos, right, because chances are, for the average person, you will never in your entire life, ever for the average person, you will never ever get to see anybody do anything like this forever. There's a very legitimate possibility that you are surrounded by idiots all the time. And the thing about being surrounded by idiots is that if you put 50 idiots in a room, those 50 idiots will start fiddling diddlies with each other. And now the 50 idiots think that it's normal to be an idiot. But it's not normal to be an idiot. Like, that could possibly be one of the worst things that could ever happen to you is you normalize being an idiot. Like, what are some things that I discuss? Make sure that your financials are not going into the negative. All right, and when I talk about financials going into the negative, I'm like talking about things that like you made an investment that will legitimately ruin your life forever. And what are some of these investments, right? I talk about this, right? One investment is you leverage yourself to the eyeballs and threw a Hail Mary into the middle of nowhere. You're poor forever. What's another way to be poor forever, right? The only thing you have is a house and a car. That's another legitimate way of being poor forever. Okay, if the only thing you have is a house and a car, because here's the thing, and I've discussed this idea. Like, if you find a way to make a little bit more money, which is good, right? Granted that you didn't do something horrible for the money. Let's say you went and you whatever, you found a way to make yourself a little bit more money. That's good, right? And in all honesty, if you're looking to make money, I would highly suggest making money via assets. Okay, the whole thing about investing money, and I'll go into that here in a little bit again, in a little bit. But chances are, like, if you make a little bit more money, and the only thing you do with the money, and the only thing you think about with the money is improving the house that you live in. Like, you go and you rent yourself a better place to live, or you buy yourself a better house. That's what you did with the money, right? Houses are just a little bit better than a car, right? And I talk about this in terms of the look at my house and look at my car people, right? You got people that are like walking around, oh my God, I made it, look at my house. Oh my God, I made it, look at my car. Houses and cars are horrible investments. Homes and cars are horrible investments. All right. I would not, houses are a little bit better than a car. A little bit better. All right. You're gonna have to pay to fix the thing up. I mean, and it, I mean, homes are just a little bit better than a car. They're not great investments. They're not even good investments. They are an investment, but your car is technically an investment as well, right? Homes are not good investments. You don't want to be in a situation where you found a way to make a little bit more money, or you definitely don't want to be in a situation where you think, oh my God, if I just had a house, I would be rich, because that is not true. If you had a house, chances are you would be exactly where you are. You would just have a house. All right, you don't want to be in a situation where oh my God, if I just had a house, I would be rich. All right, you don't want to be in a situation where it's like if you make a little bit of money, the only thing that you do is buy yourself a little bit better of a place to live and buy yourself a little bit better of a car. That's where you don't want to be, okay? You really want to invest your money. And I've discussed the idea of investing money is that you can spend the money afterwards anyway, and I'm not encouraging anybody do this. I'm not encouraging anybody to, put your money into an investment and then pull all your money out and then go and spend it. I am not encouraging that. But like me, when I take a look at my financials, when I have money left over, I invest it. All right, if I have when I have a large excess of money left over that I cannot invest, then what I will end up doing is just putting the money in the S&P 500, or I'll put the money in the QQQ, or I'll put the money in some kind of a dividend ETF. That's what I will do with the money. All right, because I can always leverage against my assets to access the capital. All right, there you I there is no reason, like if I made $1 million and I spent $1 million, then I would have made nothing. But if I take my $1 million and I put that $1 million into an equitable asset, if I put that $1 million into an equitable asset and I made 10% on that equitable asset, I made 10% on that asset, I would make $100,000 a year. And I took a loan against 80% of that asset at 7% interest, I would have to pay $56,000 a year for that $800,000 loan, and I would still have $200,000 of positive equity left over, right? I can use the money without really using the money. All right, I can float the debt, and I would still have money left over, and I would still have positive equity, right? But but chances are, like, if you're which is almost everybody, you know my whole thing is like, if you think that you can be a cattleman, if you legitimately think that you can be a cattleman, then let's see it. Because I guarantee it, and I just put this in terms of legitimate terms. If I was put on a field with anybody, and this is effectively what happens in a capitalistic society. And this is also the big benefit of capitalism, because we should be encouraging the people who are successful to be successful. We should be encouraging that. Do you want to live in a world where successful people are punished? Is that the world that you want to live in? Think about that from a fundamental standpoint. Do you want to live in a world where successful people are punished regardless of money? Right? If you have somebody who has a lot of money, but they're doing some horrible thing, do you want them to be rewarded for that? If you have a poor person who is doing some horrible thing, do you want them to be rewarded for that? No, right? That would not be a good system for society. We should be encouraging successful people, right? Forget the money, right? I've always said, forget the money. Money doesn't do anything. Money doesn't do anything. I see money as a byproduct. I do something and then I just end up with money. All right, I don't sell my soul to the devil for money. All right, it just is what it is. I guarantee it. Don't get your panties in a wad about it, right? I mean, let's see it. If you want to run cattle, then go and do it. There's no reason why you cannot do 10%. If you have a bunch of opinions and you have nothing to show for it, I guarantee you're effectively a homeless person. I would be willing to bet you're 1 foot away from being homeless. Slowly losing money over a long period of time is like one of the worst possible outcomes that you could ever have. All right, money's not an opinion. When it comes down to it, I actually made it. All right, and it's like me when I see somebody, it's like, oh well, I want to be a cattleman, and I'm gonna be a cattleman. It's like like I don't know if like like I mean if you're like if you're whatever like if you're like a kid, then sure. I mean it's like yeah, the world is your oyster, right? But I mean after a certain point, it's no longer it's no longer make believe land. All right, like if you haven't put in effort, any effort to make it, then you're not gonna make it. I would, after a certain point, it's too late. I would be willing to bet anything, and I legitimately, and I said, right, a couple, maybe a year or two ago, I said, right, I would be willing to bet that almost all of you, like if you're watching, and here's the thing, if you're watching my channel, everybody that you know will more or less be doing exactly the same thing that they were doing 2 years ago. They would not have improved or done better at all. They would not have, a lot of people are actually even going downhill. A lot of people are doing worse as time progresses. Right? It's like, a lot of people are actually even going downhill. They're doing worse as time goes on. And I said I was willing to bet, and I just said it just is what it is, right? I'm not bashing anybody. I'm not making fun of anybody. I legitimately said a couple of years ago that I would be willing to bet, right? That that you and everybody if you're watching my channel, chances are over the last 3 years of your life, over the last 2 years of your life, over the last year of your life, you have not done anything to improve your outcome. I guarantee it. I would be willing to, if I took this bet with every single person on a 10-1 odds, I would make an immense amount of money. You're more or less doing exactly what you're doing. Right? You don't have any, you don't have any direction, no nothing. Right? It's not like you're not working on improving anything or anything, right? And the whole thing about this is you have to remember that if you are average IQ, you can learn how to do anything. You can learn how to do anything. Why? My whole thing about learning is that learning doesn't cost hardly anything. And once you have gotten yourself in a situation where effectively, your bills are paid for, right? You've effectively got yourself into a situation where you have some money left over every month and you're systematically budgeting your money and et cetera, et cetera. And you've also learned to not kick yourself in the dick. Once you have done this, don't even worry about money anymore. Don't, oh my God, now it's time for me to go out and see where I can spend my extra $2,000. Let's say you make $5,500 a month and your monthly expenses are $3,500. Your goal in life should not be to spend your $2,000. That should not be your goal. All right. Your goal in life should not be, oh my God, let's say that you make $7,000 a month and you spend $5,000. Let's say that you make $6,000 a month and you spend $4,000. Let's say you make $5,000 a month and you spend $3,000. Your goal in life is not to go out into the world and spend your $2,000. That's not your goal. Your goal is now to not kick yourself in the dick and work on improving your outcome. Right? And I've said that once you've done this, why not just like go out and learn something? Right? Learning doesn't cost anything. You can effectively learn how to do anything. Find something that makes sense to you. If putting money in the S&P makes sense to you, then put money in the S&P. If putting money in whatever, you can learn how to. If you want to be a farmer, then go and be a farmer. Right? Go and find yourself a 50-acre lease, pay $1,000 a year for it, and run some cattle. Right? I mean, whatever it is that you want to learn to do, go out and learn how to do something. Learn how to do something. You can learn how to do anything if you're average IQ. But after a certain point, I would be willing to bet anything. And if I took this bet with every single person on a 10-1 odds, I would make a lot of money. After a certain point, it's effectively too late. Don't get your panties in a wad about it. I mean, prove me wrong. And I even said, the whole thing about this, like when we take a look at what I'm doing, there's a very legitimate possibility that, my earnings go up to about $1 million a year. Right now, I make about $500,000. It's 450, something like that, $1,000 a year right now. If I were to run my business sideways from today for the next 365 years or 365 days, I would make about $450,000, but my income is actually going up on a monthly basis, and I'm actually even insuring the growth of my business. I'm actually even insuring it. I'm not guaranteeing it, but I am insuring it. If we just take the average, right? Because me right now, I'm not having any kind of difficulty. I'm maybe trying 5%, maybe, and I'm making about $500,000 a year. There's a very legitimate possibility that my income actually goes to $1 million a year, starting by about March, April, May. So let's take the halfway and say 750,000. There is a legitimate possibility, legitimate almost for everybody, that you're not even going to get to the 10% mark. You're not even going to do 10%. I would bet you anything you're not even going to make 75 grand. And that's not good. There is no reason why you cannot do 10% if you're not mentally handicapped. You definitely do not want to be walking around and I fell out of heaven a 7 land. My life is a magical journey land. If you start walking around in I fell out of heaven a 7 and my life is a magical journey land, if you start walking around in what I call La La Land, Disneyland, you're never leaving. You're effectively stuck there for the rest of your life. If I or anybody else managed to pull you out, it would be a miracle. I would be willing to bet you anything. And if I took, you're not even going to get to the 10% mark. You're not even going to make 75 grand. Most people won't even make 75 grand a year doing anything. All right, most people won't even do that, and that's 10%. I am trying about 5% right now, and I'm making about $450,000-$500,000 a year. All right, it just is what it is. I actually did it, and when it comes down to it, I'm not lying about this stuff. I'm not lying about it. It just is what it is. I actually put in the effort, and I actually made it. If you think you can run cattle, then let's see it. Go out and do it. Right? Let's see it. Let's see. If you say you can run cattle, I would love to see it. All right, a lot of people aren't, almost everybody is not even going to do 10%. I would bet you anything. I would bet you anything. Most people aren't even going to make $75,000 a year doing anything. All right, and my whole thing is like when I look at my perspective, when I take a look at my perspective, I'm not a malicious person. I don't get a kick out of it. I don't think it's funny. I don't think it's amusing. Like there's a very legitimate possibility that I make over 200 times the money of the average person. I make over 200 times more money. There's a very legitimate possibility. I don't know exactly what my business is worth. I can't tell you that I make enough money in 1 month to pay for an entire year's worth of my expenses. All right, here in about 5 months, I will have actually put away enough equity to float about $1.5 million worth of debt for 2 years without working one more day. All right, there is a very legitimate possibility that I make over 200 times more money than the average person, and it's not my opinion. All right, I actually did it. I put in the work, and I'm the one who made it. You don't want to be in a situation where you're legitimately, because here's the thing is that you can do 10%. Anybody, if you are average IQ, you can do 10%. But if you sit there with your panties in a wad, if you sit there and I fell out of heaven a 7 and my life's a magical journey land, if you sit there and you have a bunch of opinions and you have nothing to show for it, if you sit there doing that, you will never make it out. And I would bet you anything. All right. And if you start hanging around idiots, you will normalize being an idiot. And that is like the worst thing that could ever, one of the worst things you can have happen to you. It's not normal to be an idiot. You don't want to learn to become an idiot. It's like one of the worst things that could ever happen to you.